All right. Sorry about that. How's everybody doing today?
Okay.
Good. Welcome to the Poole Family YMCA. And I am here to welcome Dr. William Porter. He was very easy for me to remember because my last name was Porter, so we were immediately kindred spirits. But I met him through the Garner Chamber of Commerce, and we see each other at events fairly frequently, which has been a pleasure for me because it's been neat to explore his books and things like that. But just so you get to know him a little bit, he is a retired professor of geography, and he taught at the Elizabeth City State University. He's the author of inspirational books, a host of the Inspirational Book Club, and a member of the Garner Chamber of Commerce. If you haven't had a chance, at the end, he'll be selling his books. I've been trying to get it as part of our book club back here. So we are having our kickoff to the year of our book club with a guest speaker. So thank you for joining us. Did you want me to go over the agenda, or would you like to go over the agenda?
Well, I have it on the
Or
PowerPoint.
you have it on there?
So
All right.
if you'd like to, but I have it on this.
No, we'll let you go there. Well, if
Okay.
you will please join me in welcoming Dr. Porter.
Thank you, Beth. It's good being here with you all. I'm very excited about coming here this afternoon and telling you what I do as an author. And I am an author. I write inspirational books, and I do other things as well. And you'll see this a little later, and that is my website, WilliamPorterLife.com. If you'd like any other information, just go to my website. And I'd like to thank Beth for inviting me to speak. And I also would like to thank my wife Yvonne and our daughter Pamela for being here, as well as all of you. I really appreciate you being here. And so we're going to go through this PowerPoint. And I'll give you, first of all, an agenda, what I plan to talk to you about today. And I'll give you my personal background, first of all, and then I'll talk about how I got started as an author. Then I'll give you a description of my writings, including challenges in writing. And I will review the books that I've written, and you can see some of the books on this table as well as that table, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And I'll talk about other ventures I'm involved in. And finally, I'll give you my contact information. And of course, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions before we leave. First of all, as far as my personal background is concerned, I've always loved geography. Ever since I was small, I remember when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I was intrigued with maps, especially for some reason, the state map of the United States. And I remember that I had remembered the state capitals of every state of the United States. And so I was very intrigued by that, and fortunately, geography became my career. But anyway, a few years ago, I developed this map. And by the way, the same map is right here. What this map shows is North Carolina background cities that have been important in my growing up, as well as going to college and working. And the red dots, of course, indicate the cities that I plan to talk about, and the cities are identified by the black lettering. This is Rocky Mountain right here, which is about an hour east of here. This is where I was brought up. I graduated from high school in Rocky Mount and attended college in Durham. I went to North Carolina Central University, and I got a bachelor's degree in geography, as a matter of fact. And in one of the books, it's kind of interesting how I came to get into geography, how I got into geography at that time. It was really miraculous. But at any rate, I graduated from North Carolina Central University in Durham, went off to graduate school for a master's degree at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. I came back 2 years later and taught at the same school that I graduated from. And it's kind of interesting, it was during the Vietnam era. Most of you probably are not familiar with that era, but the Vietnam era, I had classmates who were drafted into the Army. Fortunately, I was not drafted into the Army. I went on to graduate school, got my master's. As I said, 2 years later, I came back. But in the meantime, I had a roommate and several other of my classmates were drafted into the military. And they went off, most of them, to Vietnam. And the interesting thing is, 2 years later, after I had gotten my master's degree at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas, as I said, I came back and taught at my alma mater, North Carolina Central University. By that time, many of these fellows had gotten out of the military, having gone to Vietnam. And I remember my first class, there were about 7 or 8 of these fellows in my class, my first class teaching at North Carolina Central University. And these particular individuals were, if I might say, pretty rowdy because we all came in together at North Carolina Central University. And so I said to myself, now this is my first time teaching. I said, these guys are going to cause me all kinds of problems because I remembered them earlier when we came into college. But looking back, and actually they caused me no problems at all. I mean, they were the nicest guys as well as all the other students. I think it was a class of 25, 30 people. And so that always stuck with me, even though, quote unquote, they were, in my opinion, rowdy as we came into college. But by the time they came out of the military, they took advantage of the GI Bill. But anyway, I taught at North Carolina Central University for a few years, and then I went to the University of Maryland, College Park, entered a doctoral program. And from there, Elizabeth City, where I taught geography professor for several years. At the University of Maryland at College Park, entering a doctoral program. I stayed there and then returned to North Carolina at Elizabeth City, where I worked there for years, Elizabeth City State University. Then to make a long story short, I retired and years later came to Raleigh, and that's where we are now. Well, of course, we're in Garner now, but we were in Raleigh before moving to Garner a few years ago. And so anyway, I wanted to give you that piece of background. Now, but we're here to learn about how I got started as an author and some details as far as what I write about. So that's what I want to do now, is to tell you what that is all about as far as me getting started as an author. So this is our daughter, our other daughter, who could not be here today. She's working. And she had a problem. This is a picture, of course, of her pumping gas. She came home one day and said, "Mom, Dad, I gave out of gas." And I don't want to tell you this story because I think she can tell this story a lot better than I can tell it. And I'd like for her just to say a word about exactly what happened, because I can't tell it as well as she could. I really can't. And this is the reason why I got started writing the book. And as a matter of fact, it's the first chapter in the book. So Panya, do you want to take about a minute?
Spot. Okay. So what had happened was, my parents always told me not to drive on E, okay? So I learned my lesson for sure. So I'm going 440 westbound. If you're familiar with, I lived off of Six Forks, focused on going to work. So 440 westbound going towards Glenwood Avenue. And, you know, I don't know what it is now, but it's a tall, high-rise. At one point was Howard Johnson's or Holiday Inn or something when I first moved here. But as you go down, go from Six Forks towards Glenwood Avenue, there is an incline like my father spoke of, and it's like a curve. And it's mostly traffic going to Crabtree at that point. But I ran out of gas way before that point. I mean, I had to have been halfway between the Glenwood Avenue exit and Six Forks. I knew I was out of gas because my car started making some funny movements, and then I finally look at my gas gauge, and it's on E, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can just make it to that. At the time it was a BP. It's right at the base of that high-rise hotel, and so I got a long ways to go, but with God and it was a miracle. I was out of gas on 440. As you roll down the hill, you know, it's like 4 or 5 lanes at that point. You get to a stoplight, okay? I'm out of gas. I can't stop at the stoplight because I won't be able to accelerate enough to get to the gas station. So I'm just rolling. I mean, my car is rolling, and I'm praying, and I'm like, okay, I'm in trouble. I wasn't supposed to drive on E. I'm late for work. So many things went through my head. Well, my car rolled. Thank God no cars were coming, but I rolled past the stoplight. It was a red light. Oh, there are no policemen in the house. But rolled down there, and I guess maybe you don't know, but when you went out of gas, your steering wheel starts to lock up. So I am stirring. I didn't make it beyond the stoplight. Made it at that parking lot, and that's the guy intervention, because it gets kind of flat. So my gravity is not pushing me down. I said, I'm a professional engineer. This science needs to work for me right now. So I'm turning the steering wheel really hard to steer, and I reenacted that for my father. Actually, I don't think I was that close to the pump. I was a good ways away from the pump, but close enough to get the gas and be able to go on to work. But that's a small miracle for me. A hard lesson learned. It could have been worse. I just feel like that was God. And my father loves that, because he's like, I told you not to ride on E, so now you know. But that's my small miracle story.
Again, she can always tell that story much better than I could.
Anyway, that particular experience that our daughter had of giving out of gas, and that's something that you don't want to have happen. But anyway, it motivated me to write about not just that particular incident, but also her story. Before the pandemic, she traveled a lot in the Caribbean, and so included in the story that I wrote about her, it's the first chapter in Life in the Spirit, the first book that I wrote, and the title of it is Nervous Drive, as you can see. And but the central theme of this particular chapter was her experience of miraculously making it from the interstate here in Raleigh, North Carolina, to the gasoline pump about a mile and a half away. And so she was very excited about it. We were excited too, but I tell our daughters quite a bit that any experience that you have but cannot be felt like you feel it. And so while we were excited for her, she was really excited. And so, but anyway, I decided to write a story about it. Now, as far as the description of my writings, just like this particular story, I describe these experiences that we all have from time to time as being unusual, extraordinary, and miraculous. And not that they happen a lot, but from time to time, I believe that we all have these kinds of experiences. And I was just talking to the gentleman here, and he was telling us about the experience he had back down in Florida. And so we all have that, and it's just exciting for me to have the opportunity to write about those kinds of stories. Let me give you an example. This is the front yard of our house here in Garner, and there was a terrible windstorm, I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it blew a large portion of our tree in the front yard down. And it was early in the week, and we were expecting guests later that weekend. And so I certainly didn't want this tree to be there when we entertained the guests the upcoming weekend. And so, but this happened throughout our neighborhood, and so frantically I called various landscapers in the area to try to get the situation rectified. In other words, to get the tree removed, and I wasn't successful, knowing that we were going to have company the following weekend. Well, as time went on, midday and earlier that afternoon, I became more and more stressed out and realized that I wasn't going to get anybody, unfortunately, to remove the tree. So I decided to go to a restaurant and to kind of de-stress. And so I went to this restaurant, and actually this was in Cary. And I sat down and ordered my meal, and about 2 or 3 minutes after I ordered whatever I was going to get, this person came by. This fellow came by and sat. About 2 or 3 minutes after I sat down, this person came by and said that, hey, I know you. You know, we're part of this networking group together. And I told him my sad story. You know, that felt good. Whenever you have something negative happen, it just feels better for you to tell it to someone else. So anyway, I told him the problem that I had about the tree being down in our front yard, and I couldn't get in contact with any landscaping people. And well, he said that that's what he does. I do landscaping. And deep down inside, I said, well, praise the Lord. I really don't remember what I said, but I was appreciative that he was a landscaping person. And so immediately I told him my problem, and he said he would have no problem coming by my house to take care of the problem. So the next day or two, that's what he did. He came by the house, and by Wednesday or Thursday of that week, he not only removed the large tree that had fallen, but he also gave the tree in the front yard a very good trim. At the time, I thought it was too much. I thought he had scalped, if you remember, the tree. But actually, that's good for trees to have them pruned like that. So anyway, but the point I want to make is that if I had been 30 minutes earlier, or if he had been 30 minutes later going to that restaurant, I would have missed him. And I would have never had the opportunity to tell him about the problem that I had. And I probably would have continued to be a sad individual that afternoon. So anyway, fortunately I met him, and he came and solved the problem. So definitely, in my opinion, I think that was a divine connection. Well, this is another situation that was really more life-threatening. My brother in Florida came to Raleigh, and we were in a shopping mall, and we decided to drive from the shopping mall in Raleigh to Garner, which is about 10 miles away. And we approached this railroad crossing. And as we approached this railroad crossing, I heard a loud noise to the left. And as you can see here in the picture, and it's down by White Oak, if you all are familiar with it, there was a lot of brush and trees to the left, and I couldn't see what was coming. But I kind of figured that it was a train, and in fact, that's what it was. It was a train. And so I had to throw on brakes. The crossing rail came down behind my vehicle. At the time, I had a Prius. I could hear the crossing bar coming down behind my Prius, while at the same time, in front of me, it was about maybe no more than a foot between the front part of my bumper and the edge of the train, and it was a freight train. And as you know, freight trains take forever to pass. And so I had to have my foot on the brake pedal for at least 2 or 3 minutes until that freight train passed. And I couldn't back up because the crossing guard had come down. And I had to keep my foot on the brake pedal for at least 2 or 3 minutes, but believe me, it felt like it was 10, 15 minutes. It felt forever. So eventually, the train passed. My brother was sitting in the passenger seat, probably in worse condition than I was, because he didn't have any control over the situation. He could only hope that I would keep my foot on the brake pedal, that I wouldn't sneeze or somehow let my foot off the brake pedal, because when you do that, you know, if you have a stoplight, for example, when you do that, the car tends to inch forward. But in that situation, that's what you want when the light turns green, right? You want to go forward. I didn't have that option of going forward in this situation, so I had to keep my foot on the brake pedal. So, we finally got home, my house here in Garner, and about a week later, I decided to take a photograph of this intersection, the crossing, because I wanted it to be at the front of this chapter that I wrote about this situation, the train. And this is it actually was chapter 14, so I'd written about 13 other chapters by the time I got to this chapter. And but the thing is that about a week when I went back, I guess it was about a quarter of a mile from this intersection, I took a picture. I just wanted to take a picture of a train coming by the intersection, and that would suffice. But when I took a closer examination of this picture, I saw that not only do you see the train coming from the left, but you also see a vehicle that was in the exact same position I was in about a week earlier with the crossing bar down. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but Yvonne, could you pass these over? You could see it very well from this picture. And the crossing arm was down with the vehicle in the exact position I was in about a week earlier. Now, can you imagine that? The chances of that happening, me taking a picture of another vehicle, not intending to take a picture of a vehicle in this position. Yeah, that's fine. Just lay it in the back. But to me, to be perfectly honest, to me that was more of a miraculous situation than what me and my brother had gone through a week earlier. I mean, it was amazing. So anyway, that's just an example of an unusual and I believe miraculous kind of situation that took place. Okay, now what highlights the severity of this particular situation is that we found that about a month or so later in that summer, there was a mortality situation in Morrisville where a couple was killed as they attempted to cross a railroad crossing in Morrisville. So it was very serious. And also, if you want to take a look, you don't have to read it now. Hopefully you won't read it now, actually. But you can take a read of this. I don't know, some of you may be familiar with this situation that happened a few years ago. You were familiar with that situation?
That's my home.
That's your home,
Mhm.
Morrisville?
Yeah, I was raised in Morrisville.
Yeah. So this just points to the severity of the situation that we were in, okay? Okay, the challenges in writing. What are some of the challenges in writing? And I'll now talk about the nonfiction books that I've written, and you can see the books that I've put on the table over here, the two piles to your left, or at least the left part of the table. These are the nonfiction books that I've written. Life in the Spirit is one, but what happened was that after writing Life in the Spirit, which turned out to be, I thought, very good, had a very good publisher, no problem at all, did a very good job, and was published in August of 2015. And in the fall of 2015, I spent promoting the book. And then in 2016, I decided to write my second nonfiction book, Miracles in the Life of Ordinary People. And so I spent most of 2016 doing that. By mid-September, I had finished the manuscript of Miracles in the Life of Ordinary People. And I submitted it to the same publisher that had published my first book. And so the 1st of October, I was notified by the publisher that the manuscript had been accepted and that they would deliver me a hard copy. And this is the hard copy that they delivered to me. I looked at it, and of course I approved it. I was really ready to get my copies to be distributed. And so, and this is the book. And then 2016, by mid-October, I had a desire to have 100 copies, or it may have been 50 copies. I forget exactly how many books. But the publisher indicated that I would receive these copies by the 1st of November. And I was really interested in getting the copies because I wanted to market the book during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. And so November and December came and passed with no books. And in 2017, January, still, there were no books. So I was wondering, well, what's going on? And so by mid-January 2017, I was contacted by the publisher, and their response was that they were in a period of transition, which basically meant that they had gone out of business. Obviously, I was devastated. I was waiting for my 100 copies to be received so I could go ahead and market. So I was in devastation, but it was a key, I think. They had gone out of business, but fortunately, late 2016, early 2017, I was in the process of writing my first novel. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. As a matter of fact, Heaven Can't Wait or Can It? Dreams of Love, Deceit, and Hope. And this is a copy of it, which is the first fictional novel. And so I was in the process of writing that, and so I didn't worry a whole lot about Miracles in the Life of Ordinary People not being published, because I had that to fall back on. And so in the fall of 2017, I spent promoting Miracles, not Miracles, but Heaven Can't Wait or Can It? Dreams. And but in 2018, I decided to revisit the copy of the book that I didn't get, the 100 copies or the 50 copies that I didn't get. So I decided to revise the Miracles book, and in the meantime, I got a new publisher, and the new publisher suggested that I change the name of the Miracles in the Life of Ordinary People to Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People. And I worked on this for most of 2018, and this is what resulted: the Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People. And I made some pretty drastic changes to it. And in hindsight, this is a much better product than this. And so actually, it was sort of like a blessing in disguise that the Miracles in the Life of Ordinary People was not accepted, because the miracle, what I had revised, Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People, is a much better product. Is a much better product. And another thing about Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People is that there's a chapter in here about my history. So if you want to know about some of the things that have occurred in my life early on, as well as more recently, you can read it, and it happens to be Story 6, WPJ Life of Miracles. Okay, so as far as a review of the other books that I've written, it's kind of interesting that we were in church one time, and this church member came to me. She had read the Miracles book. I believe it was the Miracles book. But anyway, she suggested that I do a series. Well, I wasn't very interested in doing a series of books at that particular time. But what I did was to do another book, which essentially ended up being the second book in a series of novels. This being the first, Heaven Can't Wait or Can It? Dreams. And at the beginning of 2019, I had started to write the manuscript for Heaven Can't Wait, or Can It, the sequel. And it was, of course, my second novel. And this, of course, is the picture of the cover of this book. And in 2020, I wrote the third novel in the series. Now, in 2020, it's kind of interesting because it was the period of the pandemic. And so, as you know, everything was shut down. And so it was very easy for me to write. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot else to do during that time. So in 2020, I wrote that, the manuscript for that, and then in the fall of 2020, it was published. And Heaven Can't Wait, or Can It, the fruition, that's this book. Okay, and then 2021, I wrote the fourth novel in the series, For Heaven's Sake. And in the fall of 2021, it was published. And this is the front cover of For Heaven's Sake. All right. So these novels describe the relationships that people have, that the characters have formed with and among themselves, and also their travel experiences. And it's the travel experiences that distinguish the novels. And I'll explain that. For example, Heaven Can't Wait, or Can It dreams of love, deceit, and hope. There was a travel experience to Hawaii. And then the sequel, there was an airplane flight to Bermuda. And the fruition, there was an ocean cruise to Bermuda. And for Heaven's Sake, there was another airplane flight, this time to South Florida. And a fifth novel in the series will be published in about a month or so, and it will be in the spring of probably in April. And the title of this novel is Wonders of the Spirit. And as a matter of fact, a book signing is planned for the Chamber in April, and you all are all invited to the book signing. And if you want to know the specific date of it, you can just check on my website, WilliamPorterLife.com. You can find that out. Okay, so the books I've written, whether the two nonfiction books or fictional novels, are spiritually focused, biblically based stories about relationships. And so you're going to be reading some wholesome material, which I feel is needed. And anyway, there are other ventures that I've been involved in, workshops for beginning writers and future authors. In other words, if you feel like you want to become an author, or if you simply want to write better, I think I can help you with that. And also, we have an inspirational book club. I'm the host of the new inspirational book club. We meet every first Saturday of the month on Zoom from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. And what we do is talk about the books that I've written, the stories. And again, if you'd like to become a part of that, just drop me an email, WilliamPorterLife. No, excuse me, that's not it. WAPorter4995@yahoo.com. Just drop me an email and we'll be glad to have you in the book club. So, to end the presentation this afternoon, I'd like to give you my keys to success as an author or in any endeavor. And that would be to identify, develop, and to practice. That is, to identify your talent. And this is your purpose. I think me and the gentleman, we were talking about purpose. And this gives your life quality. And the second thing is to develop a service or a product. And this is something that you can market and promote to other people. And it could be a very help to other people. And this is really what should be motivating you. And then practice your skill, which is the process. And it takes work, and you simply have to do it over and over again until you get it right. And so the keys to success, you might think of as the 3 P's of success: purpose, product, and process. And in order to complete the process, you may have to overcome obstacles, challenges, issues, roadblocks, similar to what I had to overcome when my second nonfiction book was not, well, it was accepted by the publisher, but they had gone out of business. So I had to figure out how I would stay in business. And so fortunately I was writing another book. So my contact information, and I think I've gone over my contact information already, my email as well as my website. But if you didn't get that, these are my contacts. WilliamPorterLife.com is my website. If you go there, you can see all kinds of information about what I've done as an author. And also, again, if you'd like to be a part of the book club, or if you'd like to email me about anything else, you can simply utilize the email that you see here, the email address, waporter4995@yahoo.com. And the books are also on Amazon, by the way. So, I'm finished. So anyway, I'll entertain any questions that you might have at this point, and it's been nice talking with you. So, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. How long did it take you to write the book? Or
Which-
to write a book?
Well, as I've indicated, basically about 10 to 12 months. But as I said, in 2020, during the pandemic, we had all kinds of time. so it was fairly easy then. Not only that, but I am retired, by the way. And so, as I said earlier, I spent a career as a college professor at Elizabeth City State University, and most of my time was taken up. But since being retired, I have the time to write and do other things. I've just decided to write. So that's what I do. Question?
The books series, I know we had talked about it being okay to be standing alone, but would you recommend starting with one and working through all 4?
Well, the way they've been written, you can read each one of them, even the most recent one alone, and that would be fine. The only thing is that I referenced earlier situations, but yeah, they stand alone, and it's perfectly fine. You know, if you read later novels, for example, my most recent novel. Not only that, but I think the most recent novels probably are better written because, for example, it's like anything. The very first novel, it's fine, it's great, even though the publisher went out of business. But I don't think it's probably written quite as well as the most recent novel. So.
What time is your book club?
6 o'clock, the first Saturday every month from 6 to 7. And it's on Zoom. All you need is a meeting ID and a passcode. And we'll be, and as I said, we just talk about, right now, we are in discussion of the second novel, Heaven Can't Wait or Can It, the sequel. And I think we're on, what chapter are we on? Chapter 7, I believe. In this. Yeah, so, but we'd be glad to have you.
If you were going to recommend one for a book club, for a standalone, which one would you recommend?
For a book club,
If we were going to do a book club here and join people to come and read one, which one would you recommend?
I probably, to be frank about it, I probably would recommend, I don't know how soon you'd like to get started with this book club, but I'm really, really excited about the book that's coming out in April, the 5th in the series, Wonders of the Spirit. So I would recommend strongly that one. And it's going to be out in a couple of months. Wonders of the Spirit. Any other questions? Yeah.
And not the series books, but the others, are these all your own personal experiences, or have you interviewed people that had experiences?
No, there are some of my experiences, and like in my first book, of course, our daughter, Panya, is the first story. And if I might say this, it's just it's probably the most miraculous story in this particular book, but it involves Pamela. And I won't tell you all the details, but she had to be brought from Greensboro to Hertford, and I had some issues with the vehicle I was driving, and I'll let you read the story, but it's a 4-hour drive, I believe, from Greensboro to Hertford, which is just south of Elizabeth City. And it was an older vehicle, but I drove from Hertford to Greensboro to pick her up, and there's no problem. As a matter of fact, the 3.5 hours driving back from Greensboro to Hertford wasn't a problem, but just as we were getting back, we had some car issues, and fortunately we made it back to our house at the time. We were able to park right in the exact parking space that we'd always parked the vehicle before it totally stopped, period. So.
Let me just interject something. The first one he did more about family, people that are close. And the second one, miracles, he kind of interviewed people. There's one in there, which is a miraculous story within itself. The gentleman, honestly, and I was changed the name. And we get to it. So he interviewed him. He was a member, he was in there. Someone at the church was knew him, and he put him together with him because he wanted to learn how to write a story. But he interviewed him, and his story was he was put off bed honestly high, and he had cancer. And what happened with him, Make-A-Wish asked him, what did you want, as your desire to happen? And he said that he wanted to meet LeBron James. And then he said, you know what, everybody going to see me high, they've been praying for me. So no, I want Chick-fil-A to be going to see me high. And lo and behold, this gentleman, high school student, Chick-fil-A fellow, but LeBron came to you and surprised him to visit him. So that's kind of the story. And I don't know if I told, yes I did, the other day, that same gentleman who wanted to learn how to write a book, he had gotten with him, and he was on PBS the other night, he's reading his book. And the other story, the other part about it, he graduated from Montesina High, cancer free. He graduated from North Carolina Central University, and he's on PBS the other night. He's reading his book.
I did not know that.
I didn't tell you. He's reading the book.
Anyway, his story is story 4 here in Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People. So, of course, I had to alter the names and stuff. But yeah, that was something.
It's neat when you can recognize the miracles.
Yeah, and especially if you've been involved in the miracle, because it's, well, I don't want to take a lot of time, but we were on our way to the state fair about 5 or 6 years ago, and we just overheard this couple talking about how miraculous it was that they were in a collision similar to what you were in. What's your name? Ivan. Similar to what you were in Florida. They were what you call it, T-bone?
Yeah.
But anyway, they survived. It was amazing. I don't know if you remember that, but they, so anyway, it was intriguing to me. And so that became the first story in this book, story 1, the collision. So that was really amazing. So yeah, sometimes I listen to stories of other people, and if I get their permission, I go ahead and document their story. And of course, I've had enough happen to me, and there are a few stories in there about me. But again, we've all had these stories, these experiences, and whether we recognize these experiences or not, but we've all had them if you really stop and think about it. So, as they say, God has been good to all of us. It's just a matter of our recognizing that fact. Any other questions?
Yeah, how long have you been in Garner?
What, since about 11, 12 years? 11, 12 years, something like that. I think, right? Yeah, because before Garner, we were in Raleigh.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been here for quite a while now, 11, 12 years. Okay. That answers your question, I assume.
Do you have a hope for your next book?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Again, I'm working on the book that's going to be, I've already worked on the book that's going to be published in a couple of months. It's all written and everything. It's just putting the final stages together with it. But in addition to that, I've already started working on my 6th novel. As a matter of fact, I have only 1 chapter left. I think it's going to be about 15 chapters. But the last few months I've been working on the 6th novel, not the one that's coming out in a couple of months, but the one that probably won't be out until maybe 24 sometimes. So, and that I'm really, really excited about that, but I have to get the one that's coming out in a couple of months out.
One step at a time.
One step at a time, yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from on inspiration for writing books? Especially the different ones.
Well, to be perfectly honest about it, I just asked God, well, what would you like me to do? That might be an oversimplification, but I really don't. For example, with the 6th novel that I'm in the process of writing now that won't be published until 24 probably, sometimes at 24, I'm finishing, like I said, I have 1 chapter left. And sometimes in the back of my mind, something comes up and says, well, now, what are you going to do after you write this book? But I think God gives you what you need at certain times, and you really can't afford to go too far beyond what God has given you to do at the moment. And this works actually for chapters as well. Sometimes I write a chapter and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do in the next chapter, but it's not meant for me to know what I'm going to do in the next chapter. In other words, you only have grace and anointing to write whatever you're doing at the moment. And then once you get to that point, then it's amazing how things kind of come to you. So I guess to answer your question, I just kind of wait and be led to figure out what I'm going to do next. And but I have so much, until that time, because like I said, but I'm going to have to start pretty soon because this 6th novel will be completed as soon as I get the Wonders of the Spirit out, which again will probably be in April. I'll go ahead and knock this 6th novel out. And so once I do that, then I'll kind of start more seriously thinking about, well, am I going to write, what's the next one, But I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Well, obviously, very blessed.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's a blessing. It's ongoing. There's no doubt about that. Okay, well, yeah, question.
Is the first novel that the publisher went out of business, is that the only copy, the only existing copy that you have? That first?
You mean
Yes.
this one?
That's the only existing?
Yeah,
copy
this
you
is the
have.
only, well, to be perfectly honest, I don't want any other copies of this one. Because like I said, it's so inferior to the revision, But yeah, this is the only copy. I've tried to hang on to it.
That makes it valuable.
Exactly. I've tried to hang on to it, but it's just no comparison. This is so much better than this,
It was meant to be.
apparently. Yeah. But it was disappointing at the time. I was really deflated. Yeah.
What are your ideas for the future or your plans?
Well, to get this Wonders of the Spirit finalized in terms of the binding and the one where we'll have the book signing in April, there's a lot really that goes into the binding, making sure the figures are where they're supposed to be. I mean, I've already written it. I mean, that's taken care of. The editor has already looked at it, has approved, and so that's taken care of. But you still have to go through the finishing touches. And so I'll be involved with that probably for the next month and a half. And then after that, as I said, I'll probably try to finish writing the final chapter, the 6th novel. And after that, I really haven't given myself an opportunity to think about what I'm going to do after that. It's whatever the Lord might lead me to do.
What do you do for fun outside of writing?
I don't write 100% that. I do other things, as a matter of fact, but we travel quite a bit. I've told people that the Thanksgiving holiday, for example, we went to Chattanooga, Tennessee, the area around Chattanooga, Tennessee, saw Yvonne's brother and his family. And we go to festivals, music festivals. Before the pandemic, we used to go on cruises quite a bit, actually. We were season ticket holders to the Charlotte Hornets basketball team again before the pandemic. And so I do quite. I'm not just a bookworm. I mean, there are other things, by the way, for your information.
Sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning lights come on, I'm like, ah, and let there be light.
If you could revisit one place you've been, where would you go?
Off the top of my head, I would say San Antonio, Texas. Has anyone been to the Riverwalk in
Yes.
San Antonio?
Love it.
Oh, now, I've been to a lot of places. We went to Hawaii. That's nice. Been to Hawaii twice, as a matter of fact.
I go next week.
Really? Hawaii is nice. I've had science meetings in San Francisco. I've always wanted to go to San Francisco.
What part of Hawaii have you
The main island, that was it. I wasn't interested in going anywhere else really. Honolulu, the city.
I lived in Kaneohe Bay from 13 to 15, and Kaneohe Bay is maybe 15 minutes from Honolulu.
Really?
And living there, I think the main thing that struck me is I really got to know the people and culture as opposed to the tourist side of things.
Yeah.
And that was an invaluable experience. And my son-in-law is part Hawaiian, and so I just got back from Hilo, and lived on Big Island, where the lava flowed. But yeah, it's an amazing place.
Yeah, it's a story out in one of these books. After you've written so many, you kind of lose track of what's in what. But yeah, I talk about that, the luau and some of those things in one of these books. I forget which one. Yeah. So what?
I want to go to a luau.
Yeah, we've actually experienced the luau. It's interesting, very interesting. Yeah. But yeah, if I had one place to visit, at least that's what my mind tells me, and that would be San Antonio with the Riverwalk.
You might want to do it in 2024.
What's happening down there?
Solar eclipse is going right through San Antonio.
Is it really?
The solar eclipse?
It's going to start somewhere in Northeast, go across Middle America, and go through San Antonio. I'm thinking that's where I'm going to end up. I'm going to go look for it.
Is that a total eclipse?
Total.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Around what month?
In July, I believe it is.
Oh, I'll
Which
keep
means
that
it's
in
the
mind.
hottest part of the year, but
Yeah. Well, if you're there for what, a couple of days, 2 or 3 days?
I mean, you and everybody else are going to want to go through it. So there's other cities. I mean, just follow the path. You can see there's other cities.
Yeah,
I think. I was looking at another place, and somewhere in Arkansas, I think there was another place we go to.
Yeah.
It might, you don't really need to go to a big city. You just need to be in the
Right,
path.
right, exactly. Yeah, the
I
effects,
figured I mentioned since you said you like San Antonio.
yeah, the effects is the same. But yeah, there's a special feature in this book, The Miracles in the Lives of Ordinary People, an eclipse.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How about
Special feature.
international?
The what?
How about international?
Where would you go internationally?
Internationally, I wouldn't mind going back to Hawaii, but that's a long trip.
Yes.
That's a long trip. I don't really have a desire to go a lot of places outside the United States. There's so much going on these days that, some people would say they'd like to go to Africa or maybe in Europe. There's non-stop flights, I guess, from here to London. But I just don't have a desire to go to a lot of places out of the country. I really don't.
I want to go El Salvador. I heard right now the president of El Salvador is he's communist, but he's doing a great job. He's rebuilding people who have lost their houses, rebuilding their houses, and he's making a change since February. So yeah.
Yeah.
What would be your advice if somebody says they want to write about their lives, or they want to be an author, but they just haven't found the inspiration or motivation to actually do it? What would be your advice to someone like that?
Well, I would say to follow your guide, follow that inner spirit that's within you. And if you really want to do it, you really need the time. You really do. One reason why I'm able to do all this, I wouldn't have been able to do all this when I was working, because I was teaching and preparing lectures and all this kind of stuff. So you do need the time. You
So
really
this
do.
was all post-retirement?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have been, I didn't think about doing anything like this when I was working. I was tied to geography, remember geography? Now I was excited, I really loved geography, but I didn't have time to do any of this. And without going into a lot of detail, I believe that you are given an opportunity to prepare for what you may be anointed to do later on. And I think that when I was working, when I was teaching, when I was writing those scientific articles and preparing research proposals, grant proposals for students and faculty as well, keep in mind I was really writing, but it was a different kind of writing. It was a scientific writing. But now I realize that one of the reasons I was doing that was because of this. Now I do tell people that you don't necessarily have to know how to write really well, but that's really helped me a lot because I'm experienced in writing. Now this is not scientific writing, but because it's a lot different, but at least I've had that experience in writing. But going back to the eclipse, by the way, you all do know that there is a total eclipse in Raleigh in 2068. I'm looking forward to that, by the way. Hey, listen, I'm claiming that. I'm looking forward to that, 2068. But really, check it out. There's a total eclipse here in Raleigh in 2068.
That's
What time, so
what month?
I haven't researched that detail. But I will keep San Antonio in mind. 24?
24.
Yeah. That might be the same eclipse that's going to pass through. I think it's St. Louis.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. I've heard about a total eclipse being in St. Louis in 2024. That's a little closer, actually.
The one that was it 2017, 2018?
2017.
Yeah, that's the one I referenced in this book.
We had it in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had friends who literally drove down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just went to a small town.
Yeah, that's what she did, Pioneer, the one with the car problem. She drove down to South Carolina, experienced that. And yeah, I would love to. Well, thanks for that information. Yeah, that might be a place we can research, 2024.
Hey, that could be next. That could be the next book after April.
Right. Well, listen, thank you for your presence. I want to give you an opportunity before technically we're over with the session at 2:30. We still have another 20-25 minutes. But feel free to come over and look at some of the close-ups, some of the books I've written. They are available, and if you'd like to take a copy or copies, you're free to do that. And if you have a burning question before we disperse and go over there and be more informal, I guess I can answer one final question. Anybody? Nobody? Yeah.
All right, so if I were gonna plan this April book club, should I plan it for April, should I really plan it for May?
The book club,
The one
why?
that you were gonna come out, it's supposed to come out in April.
Right, right.
Should I plan it for April reading, or should I plan it for May?
I would plan it for May. On the other hand, I don't know when you had intended to start the book club. If you wanted to start it earlier, like in February or March, I mean, you don't necessarily have to wait on that particular book.
Oh,
I mean, you could do any one of these. But if you were to do that book, yeah, I would wait until May, and at least you would have more time in your planning. It just depends on when you want to start it. But if you wanted to start it earlier, I mean, you have your option here.
I have to say that the
I-
fruition
Yeah.
is probably my favorite.
The tuition.
Well, yeah, we all have favorites, but
What's
yeah.
your favorite?
My favorite is the sequel. And the reason is because, well, again, without giving too much away, there's this character, her name is Sandra. She has problems, big problems. But there's a metamorphosis of this particular character. And she went to the beach, Bermuda, and her life was totally transformed. I mean, she had problems with interpersonal relationships, she had health problems, she had a major accident. But when she went to Bermuda and met this other lady character, her life was turned around. And it was kind of moving personally, especially the end of this chapter. We haven't gotten to the end of this book in the book club yet. So you still have time.
And what's your favorite?
I kind of like the miracle.
By the way, going back to the very first book, the time when we met is in this book, Life in the Spirit.
That's good to know.
Chapter 3, Turn of Events. And that was really miraculous. I mean, it really was. The way we met, what was it, 11, 12 years? 13, whenever, what was it, 10? Something? But it was miraculous. It was amazing. Maybe I shouldn't have revealed that kind of information. But I can always say I'm getting older, you know.
If anything, it's in the book.
Exactly. That's it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. And you all just lounge around and